In this video, I'm going to show you the best and fastest ways that I farm tier 5 loot in Dune Awakening. And this is both for Haga Basin and the Deep Desert. Tier 5 gear is the stuff that you craft with duraluminum. There are two really easy and convenient spots to get to out in the shoal area. This area is the radiated zone over to the west. This is a very dangerous zone if you don't have a radiation suit, but there are two spots out here that I farm that you don't need a radiation suit at all. There's some really good loot in these places. This is basically the stuff that you want to get before you go to the deep desert. The first location where we're going to get some endgame loot is right here just north of the radiation zone. Alright, now that we're at the first location, both of these places that we're going to be going to are PvP areas. So it's possible that someone could have gotten here before you and already grabbed the loot. But for this place specifically, I like to go in through this area right here. There's some pretty tough NPCs here, but if you go in through the back, most of the time you can avoid them. We need to go upstairs in order to get the identification band and then back downstairs for the chest. In this area, there's also good crafting materials that you can pick up as well. So this loot spot is located just north of the radiation area, and now we're going to go to the other loot spot, which is just south of the radiation area. Alright, now that we're at the next spot, we're going to have to fight some enemies here. If there are no enemies here, it probably means another player has already grabbed the loot. These enemies are pretty tough. But once you're able to take these guys down, then you're going to go inside of the ship. It's a very small area, but there is a ton of landmines all around this spot. You're going to go to the right, and you're going to need your cutter array to get through the door where the chest is. There are other chests that you can find in the radiation zone, but I really like these two areas because you don't need a radiation suit at all. And as long as you have an ornithopter, they're very easy to get to. Now, there is another chest that I always make sure to loot that's inside the radiation zone. I like this chest because it's not a PvP area, so you're always guaranteed to get this chest. If you look here on the map, it's actually a cave that's right next to the big crash ship that's in the middle. Another good thing about this cave is there's a bunch of jasmium crystals that you can mine here. It's a really good idea to mine some jasmium while you're down here because you need that in order to make the duraluminum. And duraluminum you need in order to make these tier 5 items. Now the loot that we're here for, you're going to want to head right to the back of the cave. The chest is kind of hidden away a little bit behind this rock slab. As I said, this is a great spot if you have a radiation suit and an ornithopter, because you can grab this chest every time once it's off cooldown. Now those are three really great spots to get tier 5 loot. If you farm these for a little while, you'll be ready to head out into the deep desert and take on the challenges that wait you out there. And now we're going to head out to the deep desert, and I'll show you my other endgame loot farm that you can do in the PvE zone. There are pretty large PvE zones out in the deep desert where you don't have to worry about other players being able to attack you. There are a whole bunch of testing sites out here that you can loot. There's also crash ships with really good loot as well, but those are PvP areas. But if you want to just stick to the PvE, you can go into the testing sites. They have really good loot. They have some crafting materials, and best of all, they have tier 5 loot that you can get. So if you want to play it safe and avoid the PvP areas, for every one of these PvE zones, there are 2 testing sites. A lot of times these will be cleared out because players actually loot this pretty often. But if there are enemies here, keep in mind this is the deep desert, so the enemies will be pretty tough. Each one of these testing sites has a different layout. Some of them are kind of small and others are very large. But each one of them has a chest with awesome in-game loot. So what I do to be able to loot these places very quickly is, as you can see here on the map, there are 3 different zones that you can go into from the world map. So I'll go into one of these zones, I'll hit all of the loot spots, and then fly back out to the world map and then fly into another zone. You can go between these zones without going out to the world map. I just find that if I go back out to the world map, it makes it a little quicker. If you want to keep it safe and just hit the testing sites, there is 2 testing sites per zone. So if you hit all 3, that will already give you 6 tier 5 blueprints that you can use. But if you choose to hit the PvP ship crash sites, depending on if another player has hit it or not, you might be able to double your loot. It's a little more dangerous, of course, but in my opinion, it's well worth it. This crash site has already been cleared, but just to show you what the layout is like, some of them are very small. So if you can take out the enemies that are here, you can grab the loot pretty quick and get out with a nice tier 5 blueprint. Of course, this one was already hit, so no blueprint for me. So if you don't know how to get to the deep desert, you need to go to the world map. There are spots all around the edge of the map where you can go through out into the world map, like this spot right here. They're pretty easy to see on the map because there's a little gap in the cliff. There's a whole bunch of these spots, so they're pretty easy to find. Once you're on the world map, the deep desert is to the north. You can hit tab to bring up the full map to see where everything is. And then once we get to the deep desert, we just choose one of the 3 locations to start our loot farm. Now there are a few things that you're going to need for these loot farms. As I said before, for the radiation zone, it's good to have an ornithopter and of course a radiation suit. For the deep desert, obviously we're going to have an ornithopter in order to get to the deep desert. When you head out to the deep desert, there's a few things that you should definitely take with you. You should always have extra fuel for your ornithopter and your repair torch and some wire just in case you need to repair your ornithopter. It's always a good idea in Dune to have water containers on you, but because we're hitting so many testing sites out in the deep desert, we're going to be able to get plenty of water from these sites. And of course, you're going to want to make sure that you're well geared up before you head out into the deep desert because the enemies out there are pretty tough. But that's where our first loot farm comes in. Once you've looted that radiation zone a few times, you'll have some excellent gear that will serve you really well out in the deep desert. Now, of course, your first trip out here, you're not going to have anything revealed on the map. So it's not a bad idea to take some survey probes with you. Shooting off some probes will make it a lot easier to find the locations that you're looking for, rather than flying around looking for the locations blindly. So those are my favorite loot farms that I've found so far in Dune Awakening. Next, I'm going to be heading out into the deep desert, into the PvP zone to check out that area. If you guys have found some awesome loot locations, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. If you found this video useful, it'd be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay where you're at, and I'll come where you're to. Later, everyone.